The story was about a boy who had been hiding his identity as the Wisdom of Doom while living in the countryside. However, he ended up obtaining a demonic sword, which forced him to travel to the main capital, where his true identity was revealed. He was then given a quest to return the saber-toothed tiger to its home. Along the way, he acquired 2 more demonic swords, which greatly frustrated him. The question remained whether he would be able to complete his quest or not. In the battle, a man was terrified of Signature Jagger, the protagonist, and wondered what Signature truly wanted. Signature glared at him and declared that he wanted only to cut his neck. After the fight, Signature pulled something out and threw it onto the man's corpse, burning it completely. Later, he appeared exhausted from walking, and since he was injured, he thought about the reinforcements arriving so that he could complete his report. Suddenly, he sensed someone preparing to attack. He dodged, and the tree behind him was sliced down effortlessly. It shocked him to see that it was a wild creature wielding a terrifying sword, one of the cursed demonic swords. When the monster attacked again, he dodged, noticing that several trees were being cut apart by the weapon's destructive power. It was like watching someone speedrun Deforestation Simulator with cheat codes on. The battle raged on until Signature managed to leap from the severed trunk of a tree and slash at the beast, only to realize in frustration that the wound was shallow and regenerated instantly. Anger and shock filled him as the fight continued. Eventually, his sword struck the monster fatally, and he collapsed, his own blade broken. At that moment, he felt as if someone was calling to him. It was the very demonic sword, reaching out to him to fulfill any lingering resentment within him. Signature tried to resist, knowing he would end up like the orc if he picked it up, but he could not control his body and eventually grasped the weapon. To his surprise, nothing happened, and the sword instead told him to listen to it first. But Signature refused to listen and threw the sword into the nearby river. If swords had feelings, this one just got friend-zoned harder than an anime side character. After that, he lived with the thought that no one would believe an orc had been wielding a sword, and he decided not to bring any evidence. Still, he regretted that he couldn't even afford to buy a new sword with the little money he had. Suddenly, a girl appeared close by, and Signature wondered if she was a lost child. The girl grabbed his hand and said she was utterly speechless at how he had thrown her away. Signature, who was watching, was shocked and remarked that the girl must have been mistaken, then freed himself and began walking off. The girl grew angry and shouted, asking if he was really going to pretend not to know her after cradling the queen's body like that. Signature shouted back, demanding if she had gone crazy for saying such things. People nearby turned to glare at him. The way the crowd stared, it was the same vibe as when someone forgets to mute during a Zoom meeting. Signature then asked why the girl was doing this to him. The girl, angered even further, demanded how he had dared to throw her into the lake without even considering the consequences. Signature was stunned, then guessed aloud if she was actually the demonic sword, and she confirmed it. Confidently, she closed her eyes and said that Signature lacked self-awareness as a servant. Just as she was about to continue, she realized that Signature had already run away. While he was relaxing, relieved that he had escaped, the girl suddenly appeared beside him and wondered aloud whom he had abandoned. Shocked, he muttered that it was a dead end. She questioned if he was asking because he truly didn't know, and then revealed that no matter where he went, she could snap her fingers and appear right next to him. Signature felt like he was stuck in a horror movie jump scare loop, except the monster kept insisting she was royalty. Signature was stunned, and she demanded that he serve her as his queen. He wondered why he should do such a thing, but she replied that it was only natural for a servant to serve his queen, and that he belonged to her. Signature grew frustrated, telling her to go back and stop spouting nonsense. In response, she declared that she would reveal her power since he had been rude to her many times. She introduced herself as Manurva, and then revealed her true form, the demonic sword. She ordered him to kneel and show her respect. It had the same energy as someone insisting you subscribe to their YouTube channel, or else. Infuriated, Signature grabbed her hand and tried to push past her. She pleaded with him to stop and not to treat her violently. Signature went to an old man who asked why he had returned when he had said he would never come back again. Signature explained that he was there to deal with the demonic sword. The old man was confused when he heard Signature's words and demanded that he hand over the demonic sword. Signature allowed Manurva to step closer, which angered the man and made him glare at Signature. Signature explained that the girl was Manurva. Manurva began to cry, calling Signature her brother and saying that no matter how much trouble she caused, he should never try to sell her. Her performance was Oscar-worthy, if the Oscars gave out awards for Best Manipulation Tactic. Signature shouted at her not to act like that. Hearing this, the old man angrily ordered Signature to leave. Frustrated, Signature sat nearby, while the girl accused him of daring to sell her. Signature wondered why she was acting that way toward him. She replied that because he had once held her, their destinies were bound together until the end of his life. Signature thought he'd signed up for a sword fight, not a lifelong relationship contract. He was infuriated by her words. One day, while traveling in a carriage, he thought about avoiding the city. But because of Minerva, he realized he would not be able to take quests from the village guild. As Minerva looked outside, Signature asked how she could transform into a person. She admitted she did not know, but added that she was curious about how he could resist and even control her while holding her. Signature confessed he had no explanation, he simply could. The driver announced that they had reached the town. He thanked Signature for accompanying him, and Signature gratefully accepted the free ride. The driver even handed him a letter, saying that if Signature was interested in an escort quest, he should stop by at Rose Stock. Signature agreed, and the man departed with his carrot. Minerva then remarked that Signature was about to hit his head when climbing down, asking why he didn't show her the same care. He glared at her and leapt down, telling her that if she didn't like it, she could go alone. She followed him to Cade Province's largest city, Epilim. She was amazed by how much the humans had developed and felt excited to see it all. It was like she had just discovered Wi-Fi after living her whole life offline. However, Signature led her to a place that made her uneasy. She wondered aloud if he was planning to sell her again. When Signature asked what she meant, she replied it was because he seemed unusually nervous. Curious, she asked what place it was. Signature entered, and a lady welcomed him, asking what he wanted. When he said that he wished to accept a quest, she asked him to show his identification card. Signature handed it over, and as soon as she read the name, Signature Jagger, everyone around was shocked and whispered, calling him the Warrior of Doom. It spread faster than a leaked celebrity DM. Minerva burst into laughter upon hearing it. Feeling disappointed, Signature simply asked for a quest. The lady agreed to provide him with the quest, though she hesitated before handing him a letter of introduction. Signature took it and left. People around whispered, calling him the Warrior of the Tomb, the one who had assassinated the infamous Duke and was counted among the 5 great warriors. Signature muttered that these rumors changed faster than Netflix canceling shows after one season. Minerva kept laughing at the situation, and Signature shouted at her to stop laughing about something like that. Signature told her things that made her realize it was truly disappointing that the quest had been given only because he lacked the courage. As they walked through the forest, she called him the Warrior of Doom, but he asked her not to call him that. She continued teasing him anyway. The scene shifted back about 10 minutes earlier, when both of them had been sitting in front of a lady who had thanked Signature for coming and admitted she was worried since there had been no news after the quest was posted. While Signature spoke to her, Minerva looked around at the surroundings. The lady had entrusted the matter to Signature, and he had told her not to worry, assuring her that he would find what she wanted. At that time, Minerva had noticed a photo of the lady with a cat. Returning to the present, Signature hit Minerva lightly on the head and remarked that the nobles would close down the entire park just for a cat. Minerva wondered why a warrior would bother searching for a cat and thought it was amusing. To her, this was less of a heroic quest and more like a side mission from an RPG that nobody actually wanted to play. Signature shouted that it was all because of her, but she asked why he was blaming her. He replied it was because she had broken his sword and questioned how he was supposed to complete a quest without a weapon. She asked what he meant by saying he didn't have a sword when he had her instead, insisting he should think about it more carefully. She even added that if he could defeat her without any conditions, he would be the strongest person. Signature thought she sounded exactly like a game tutorial NPC giving impossible advice. He recalled those words, smacked her on the head again, and said it was nothing more than childish behavior. Angered, she called him several insulting names meant to belittle him. Signature then felt uneasy, realizing that the entire park had become strangely quiet. Even the usual chirping of birds was gone. He also thought he would be helpless if a demonic monster appeared, since he no longer had his sword. Suddenly, something rushed past Signature and caused a huge blast nearby. He realized it was the saber-toothed tiger and wondered why a quest to find a cat had been ranked A, only to understand that the lady had been referring to this beast as a cat. It was like ordering a kitten online and receiving a Jurassic Park reject instead. Manurva wondered if they were in a dangerous situation. Signature pushed her aside, making her question why he would do something like that. He told her not to dawdle if she didn't want to get hurt. Terrified, Manurva asked him to look behind because he was in danger. He had already picked up a stick to fight back, but she insisted he turn around as the tiger was already charging at him. Signature swiftly spun around and struck the beast with his strength, forcing it to fall back, which left Manurva in shock. Even though the tiger was injured, it refused to leave. Signature glared at it, thinking that normally it shouldn't have confronted him after sensing his power. Then he noticed the tiger's cubs approaching. He stepped toward the beast and asked it to calm down, assuring it that he had no intention of causing harm and was only there because Lady Marquis had been worried about it. The tiger continued to growl at Signature, but he remarked that he could understand why it had been called a kitty cat. It was the most misleading nickname since calling a skyscraper a cozy hut. Soon after, it began licking him happily. Signature then took the tiger to Lady Marquise, who scolded it as a troublemaker and admitted she had been very worried. She thanked Signature for completing the quest, though she continued calling him the Warrior of Doom. Signature told her that even though he had specifically traveled to the countryside to hide his name, she still knew it. She replied that it was hard for nobles to forget such a name. She then asked about the lady accompanying Signature, but he abruptly replied that she was a stranger. Manurva, however, called Signature her servant, and the two began arguing, prompting Marquise to comment that they seemed to have a peculiar relationship. It gave Marquis the exact same vibe as watching a rom-com couple deny they're together while everyone else can clearly see the tension. Signature asked why Marquis had named the tiger Kitty Cat. She explained that she had first found it in the form of a kitten and had called it that ever since. She thought the tiger might have run away from its home because it felt it did not belong there, and she wished to correct that. Taking the opportunity, she told Signature that she intended to send the tiger back to its original home. Signature guessed the location, and she revealed that it was in the farthest eastern area, Signature and Manurva walked along the road with the tiger and its cubs, attracting the attention of everyone around them. Both seemed very happy. Manurva remarked that the lowly humans could not take their eyes off her beauty. Signature replied that she was truly lucky and joked that he wished he could be like her with no thoughts clouding his head. It was basically him admitting he wanted a do not disturb filter for life. He continued teasing her, and she asked where they were going. Signature explained that he needed to stop by a place to purchase a sword, and asked if that was all right. Manurva tried to stop him and wondered about his reason, even shouting to ask if it was just the wind. They arrived at the best Eponym branch shop, where the shopkeeper asked how he could help them. Signature said he wanted to buy a high-quality sword. The man doubted that Signature could afford a famous sword, and suggested he look around the store, pointing out that their supplements were also excellent. Manurva reminded Signature that she would have to decide whether he should buy anything, and the man seemed cautious about the situation. Signature patted Manurva on the head, complimenting her judgment, but she told him not to do that. Signature's charm attempts landed about as smoothly as a cat trying to play fetch. The shopkeeper then led them to the ghoul department, explaining that if Signature was looking to hunt non-standard grade monsters, he might need these weapons. He showed Signature a sword called the Red Dragon, whose owner, Aaron S. Gunfield, had reportedly slain dozens of dragons alone. He explained the sword's capabilities. Signature immediately asked about the price, and when the man revealed it, he was shocked. They continued looking at other swords, and Signature seemed uneasy. Then he noticed a new sword, and the shopkeeper explained that it had just been received and discovered by Carl, one of the 5 warriors. It was not yet on display because its name and price had not been decided. Signature reached out to touch it, which automatically committed him to purchase it. It was like clicking accept terms and conditions without reading the fine print. The scene then shifted to the slums, where Signature rested with Manurva and the tiger with its cubs. Manurva found the place unpleasant, but Signature revealed he had already spent all the money on the sword and told her that if she didn't like it, she could go outside and sleep. She accused him of cheating her with another sword and of putting her in such a shady place. Signature could only shrug, silently thinking, "Welcome to budget living, sword edition." Signature ignored her and went to sleep. while she muttered that he was a disloyal warrior. At night, while everyone was sleeping, Signature heard a noise. He woke up and left his room to investigate, heading upstairs. When he reached the terrace, he saw a girl standing there, emitting a brilliant light. It was less romantic moonlight and more sudden in-game cutscene intensity. Signature felt irritated and wondered what was going on. The girl told him that he was not going to die, explaining that everyone she had been with before had perished, including the kind-hearted and the brave. Because of that, she had hesitated and had not wanted to be with him. Signature tried to guess who she was, and she revealed that her name was Suie, the cursed sword he had brought. Signature blinked, silently thinking, "Great, now my weapons are ghosting me and showing up as dramatic NPCs." Signature wondered if she meant that the people who had wielded her armor had all died by committing suicide, and he felt genuinely frustrated. Suie apologized, resolving never to be contacted again, but she seemed compelled by an unknown force. Signature patted her head and told her to calm down. He admitted that he wasn't sure how he had reached her, but he promised that he would not die on her account. She began to cry, recalling a man who had told her that one day she would meet the person she would want to spend the rest of her life with. She excused herself and asked Signature for his name. He revealed that it was Signature Jagger, and she agreed to address him simply as Sir. At that moment, Manurva appeared, noting that the room had suddenly grown cold, and that there was someone she hadn't seen before. It was the kind of chill that makes you question if you left your freezer open, or accidentally summoned a minor. Suie introduced herself and asked what Manurva was doing as she approached. Manurva explained that she had overheard from downstairs that Suie was a demonic sword and warned that she would pay the price for attempting to steal someone's servant. Signature intervened, shutting her down. Manurva then pointed out that Signature himself was problematic, as he already possessed a demonic sword. Signature reminded himself to stay calm, knowing that Suie was the Uni and that she had to be treated with respect. He also mentally braced himself, because negotiating with magical beings felt like trying to argue with a cat, pointless but emotionally draining. Hearing this, Manurva looked at Suie, who appeared cute and caring, and Suie even addressed Manurva as Uni. Manurva felt delighted and asked Suie to call her that again, which she did. The next morning, Signature asked if they were ready to leave. At that moment, they saw Suie transforming back into her sword form and returning to Signature's hands. Signature remarked that he would need to buy another sword. Great, just what I needed. Sword shopping on a Monday, because apparently my life wasn't complicated enough. Later, he returned to the same shop, slamming the door with his leg. The shopkeeper wondered what was going on. Signature demanded to see the owner. The man remarked that Signature had clearly lost his mind and probably didn't know where the owner was, so he sent a large man to educate him. The giant approached and placed a hand on Signature's head, politely warning him to leave. It was the kind of polite threat that screamed, "We're not saying we'll hurt you, but also, we totally will." Signature responded by punching him brutally, stating that he must not understand human language and that he wanted the store owner, not a security guard. He had placed the sword seller at the point of his sword, wondering why the man hadn't called the owner yet. The seller became genuinely frightened, unsure if Signature even knew who he was. At that moment, the man's father arrived with 2 warriors. One of them shouted for them to stop, questioning what was happening. The son replied that it was nothing and told him to leave. Their father instructed the son to be quiet, then turned to Signature, suggesting that he might be the cause of the trouble. Signature wondered if the old man was the owner of the store. The old man confirmed it and asked Signature to explain his actions, warning that he would have to pay if the explanation was unsatisfactory. Signature prepared to unleash his power, with Suie in her sword form. He introduced himself, stating that he carried the moniker the Wisdom of Doom, and stabbed the sword into the floor, questioning if that would serve as sufficient reason. It was dramatic enough to make any action movie director weep with envy. He reflected that selling a demonic sword to a warrior could turn the entire area into a disaster if he failed to contain it, and he wondered what would happen to the place otherwise. The sword seller claimed that Signature's warning was exaggerated and insisted he had spoken on his own. Signature explained that he did not want matters to escalate but would be taking compensation. As he approached the man, the seller panicked and called for his father. Signature intended to cut the man's arm, but the old man intervened, taking full responsibility and offering his own arm as compensation. Signature paused, thinking, Well, this is either extreme parenting or a medieval version of Who's Really Boss. Signature halted and remarked that it was a tear of fatherly love. After everything, the boy was left standing before his father, explaining that he only wanted to be helpful. His father, however, glared at him, called him useless, and walked away, leaving the boy furious at Signature. Signature continued walking with Suie in her human form, and she asked if he had really planned to take the man's arm. Signature denied it and wondered aloud what else he should do. Suie then questioned why he had aimed for the sword he had previously taken. Signature explained that it was 2 for 1, and that he intended to teach the man a lesson for his nasty personality. Suie asked why he went to such lengths, and Signature replied that it was his life's motto, to repay gratitude 2-fold and resentment 10-fold. The scene shifted to Rose Cathedral, where Manurva grew angry with Signature, saying he was always frowning and that if anyone saw him, they might mistake him for her soulmate. Signature internally sighed, thinking, "Great, another unsolicited soulmate comparison. Just what I needed today." Signature replied that it was just an ordinary sword, unlike someone else's, and wondered aloud if they ever considered that it could turn out to be another demonic sword. He teased her further, remarking that her jealousy was unbecoming, especially since nothing had gone wrong for the past 500 years. At that moment, Suie spoke up, calling Signature mean and accusing him of paying attention only to the child for a while. Signature denied it, explaining that he was merely making sure the sword was normal. Suie, however, also felt jealous and told him not to make excuses, reminding him that earlier he had fondled her so passionately but wasn't doing so now. Signature blinked, thinking, why does every conversation feel like navigating a minefield designed by a rom-com writer? Signature recalled the similar incident with Manurva and told Suie that if she didn't stop, he would scold her the same way. Suie turned her face aside and claimed it was Signature's fault. Signature tried to calm her down, admitting fault and asking her to forgive him. She brightened up, warning that she would not forgive him the next time. A man approached and introduced himself as Marc Blentier, revealing that they would be working together on the escort quest. He said it was an honor to travel alongside the warrior known as the Wisdom of Doom. Signature shook his hand, thinking that the trading company must have leaked information about him. Mark then glanced at Signature's companions, commenting that his party looked rather peculiar. Peculiar? Signature thought. I prefer the term exclusive and chaotic ensemble. He greeted Manurva and suggested they travel together to Amelia. She responded rudely, telling him not to start a conversation with her. Still, her attention was caught by his shiny bald head. When they finally departed, Suie remarked that the journey felt boring and that the human world seemed far too peaceful. Signature replied that it only showed the difference between how humans and demons fought. Suie then expressed concern about Manurva, who was sitting beside Mark. Signature felt troubled by the sight and wondered why she had chosen to sit there. Manurva, however, teasingly called Mark Baldy and asked him to protect her, which only stirred up more chaos inside the carriage. It was like watching a soap opera directed by someone who secretly loved slapstick. As they traveled into the night, they stopped to rest and lit a bonfire. Signature apologized to Mark for the disturbance his companions had caused, but Mark assured him that it was fine. He was used to it. Then, Mark began chatting at length and remarked that perhaps it was better for Manurva to behave that way. Signature replied that her cheerfulness probably came from the honey alcohol sold only in the Caravan Holy Kingdom. He explained that as long as one had that drink, they could endure hardships, even capture by a dragon. The drink was rare, though, and Signature hesitated to accept it. Mark insisted and forced him to drink. Signature wondered if something else was missing, and Mark replied that what they needed was a side dish, but said that Signature's story would be enough. Signature agreed and, reflecting, shared that he had lost his father and begun his path as a warrior at just 15 years old. He explained that at first, people had taken him in without question, but he later discovered they were hunting dogs who captured and sold the descendants of warriors to Duke Parthenon. Hearing this, Mark grew curious and asked how Signature had managed to survive such a situation. Signature shrugged, thinking, spoiler alert, it involved equal parts luck, rage, and probably bad decision-making.